All righty, righty, righty. Welcome to another edition of Who Are You and What's Your Story? And today's a fun one for me. And I mean juicy fun because I get to interview an old coworker from like 20 plus years ago, which is crazy because now I know I'm dating myself, although I love my 40s, so that's cool. Um, who really we had a interesting relationship, I would say, as coworkers. I was much more intense than she was, by the way. But fast forward 24 whatever years later, I get the privilege of connecting with Nicole Pope on a whole nother level as she has stepped into her authentic power and really claimed her purpose, which is a psychic medium, right? And you're international, if I'm not mistaken.
That is correct. Yeah. So I do lots of readings for international clients. I'm actually a teacher on an international mediumship school as well. So yep, lots of psychic mediumship work that I am just totally into. So happy to be here today, Carrie.
So happy and thank you so much for your time. So when I worked with you 20 plus years ago, I understood it to be you were going to school for computer programming. Um,
That's true.
yeah, so can you talk to me about how the past 20 years kind of allowed you to really shift from maybe what you were thought you were expected to be to what you were really called to do?
That's a really, really good question, Carrie. And what's so interesting is I have such a unique path to get to this psychic mediumship thing because I was not born with these psychic abilities. Wasn't really recognizing spirit. I wasn't one of those people who saw spirit as a child whatsoever. I was always religious, which is ironic given the last name. And I always had a structure for faith and believed in a higher power. But yeah, I went to school for computer science. I went to business school, minored in communication, and I did that for the first 20 years of my career, where I worked as a project manager, a business analyst, a quality assurance tester. Lately, I've been doing Six Sigma work and really doing process improvement work. So essentially working with very large organizations to solve their problems. So total other end of the spectrum. In my day job, I use data to make decisions and I work through those solutions and implement them, on a plan by plan, step by step basis. So pretty much the most structured job and career that you could have. But I have always, again, had that soft spot for mediumship. As I was little, I would watch those mediumship shows growing up. Absolutely love them. Continued to watch them. When Teresa Caputo did her show, and I used to see mediums and spiritual folks on the side just for fun to connect with my past loved ones. So the biggest shift happened a little after COVID, and that happened when my son, who was 8 years old at the time, told me that he could see people, he could see shadow people in our house and get crazy, right? An 8 year old, right? And who doesn't, I believe it's all real. So I believed him and I called up my medium and I said, well, what am I supposed to do about this? Right? Like he's terrified to go in our basement. He's terrified to go upstairs in our house alone. He has to sleep with all the lights on. Like, what do I do about this? And God bless her heart, as they say in the South. She gave me some advice, but she's not a mom. So the advice was not very fruitful, I will say. But she did in that conversation tell me that I was a medium and I should come train and learn how to do it so I could deal with the ghosts that were in my house. So that really just started it. I signed up with an 8-week mentorship with her and I was reading spirits on the first class, which I had no idea I could do. So it's been a whirlwind since then of classes and learning and eventually opening my own business doing this stuff. It's been so fun.
Wow. So I want to highlight for the community something that I really appreciate is that when your son came to you with a fear or with what he was experiencing, you didn't quickly dismiss it, which too often myself has I've been guilty of it too. We hear something that makes us a little uncomfortable, so it's easy to be like, I think you're right. And you didn't do that. Can you talk to me about what kind of led you to really believe him and support him in the way in which you did, rather than a way that too often we kind of dismiss things like that?
It's really interesting, Carrie, because I totally have to admit that he'd been telling me he was afraid of two people moving in the basement for a couple years, and I wrote it off for a few years. And I used to like think it was funny, or we would like I would play like let's go hide from these things. Where are they right now? And he could kind of point them out across the room. But it just didn't stop. It didn't stop over and over again. And then I finally was like, all right, if it's not stopping and he's constantly saying this, let me figure out what's going on. Because he's if you know my son, which you don't, he's a very rational person, right? He's very data focused. Like he has books of like the Guinness books of world records that he reads. Like he does not have this big imagination whatsoever. He wants to know the truth and dive into the truth. So for him to say that these things existed, I essentially was finally like, okay, let's figure it out. And then talking with the medium confirmed, obviously, that our loved ones are all around us and that he does see these things. And then she taught me how to read that energy as well. And I was able to kind of confirm it through my senses and my clairs to say they're existing. So I would say, I'll be totally honest, that I didn't fully believe him, but when he was adamant about it, and I finally kind of was just like, you know what, let's just solve it, because it's a problem. It's not going away by me sweeping it under the rug. So I'm glad that we finally like resolved it. And by the way, he's still kind of afraid of it all. Like he still won't go upstairs or downstairs by himself because he's just a sensitive kid. That's just who he is. Yeah.
So you were able to sense the entity's energy, so to speak, within your home, but you weren't ever able to resolve the energy? And I'm asking for people because there's a lot of people who don't have an idea of mediumship, which we'll get into further in a minute, but.
Yep. So the way I can feel it is I used to get goosebumps, or I would just get tingles all over my body. That was kind of the spirit's way of letting me know they were there. I had it my entire life. So I'm sure that they were trying to talk to me my whole life and I just had no idea, but that's how I was able to recognize it. But yeah, it's just, what's so interesting is that I don't live in an old house by any means. I'm sure there are like houses where you have older people that live there kind of hanging out. But for my house, it was built in the 80s. So it's not necessarily an old house. It doesn't have a long history. So the spirits that are here are past loved ones that hang out and watch over us and take care of us. So being able to tell my son that and show him that these are not bad spirits, like we are protected. We're divinely protected. We have angels that watch over us and our loved ones that watch over us, and being able to shift that narrative from a fear-based narrative, which is what most people think about when you think about ghosts and loved ones and spirits and houses. It's all this fear-based stuff. Just because you don't know, you don't realize that 99.99% of the time, it's just your loved ones hanging around, because what else would they do? They would come here, watch over you, make sure you're okay.
Yeah. Awesome. Mm-hmm. So I know you're married.
Yep.
I actually know your husband, which is kind of cool. But talk to me about how you went to your husband and said, hey, babe, I know that I work in corporate America, doing the thing, being project manager, overseeing people, right? And now I kind of want to step into mediumship. I imagine that was an interesting conversation, or was he kind of prepared for it given your son and your experience?
He is the best husband. I will say that. He is the most supporting husband. And he's the first one to say that he does not understand it, but he's very supportive of me and what I want to do in my journey. And this isn't the first harebrained idea I've had, by the way. I was a professional photographer, I think back when I knew you. And I also had a full-time job back then. And then I have worked in consulting companies. I left my job in corporate America at one point to join a one-person consulting company. So me jumping at my passions is something he's used to. And he's really just such an amazing, supportive partner where he wants me to be happy and successful. So that trumps any sort of hesitation he had on the subject matter, which is just awesome. And he continues to support me. And he's a total skeptic. Let's be real. Like he's a guy grew up Catholic, right? Like he's a total skeptic. He's very supportive, but he's even from his perspective, he says, I can't believe you can have that many readings with people where you're right every single time. There's no way, statistically speaking, that you're not connecting to something that is not on the physical plane. He's like, there's no way you could know all of that information. So
Yeah.
so he is just open and supportive, which is the best kind of, partner or spouse that I could ask for on this very unique journey.
Yeah. Well, to the community, of course, as you know, I work with a lot of people who struggle with mental health and addiction. So I can't help but highlight something that you said that I really want to reinforce is, Nicole mentioned that she's in a partnership with somebody who doesn't understand her passion, maybe to the nth degree, but loves her enough to love her through whatever it is she feels called to. And that is truly the love that I want the community to establish first for themselves, because when you do establish that, you also attract that in a significant other and partner. So that's really beautiful, and I encourage anybody who may not have that to consider looking at meeting your own needs, so maybe one day you can find that. That's awesome. And shout out to you, you're a real one, hubby. I won't say his name because that's not my place, but okay, so you're in business post COVID. You obviously recognize that you're called to do this. Talk to me about what led you to go into business doing this rather than just kind of keeping it on the side as something you do for people after hours.
So I have to be totally honest with you that it really just came down to the financial decision of it, mainly because I had to get paid for my international clients. So that's traceable through like Venmo and PayPal, right? So I can't keep having these deposits periodically in Venmo and PayPal that total a pretty big number, right? So that's kind of how I officially decided to open my business. But it was a long journey through learning how to do this to actually getting to the point where I felt comfortable reading for clients. So maybe I'll focus on that aspect of it because it's just such a journey. And I think not enough people realize how much practice and time it takes to go into becoming someone that is actually a skilled psychic and medium. And I say that knowing how many frauds there are out there, right? Because I would say 99% of the mediums and psychics that are out there are frauds. They haven't put in the time and effort. They're not worried about the quality of their outputs. A lot of them are just interested in kind of making that quick buck, especially obviously all the scammers out there. But truly to become a medium that is reputable and has high integrity is someone who just practices nonstop. So you can only learn so much in a classroom. And then essentially you just have to do practice after practice after practice. Because what's interesting is the information that is really basic on kind of how to do mediumship. So there's a certain way you tune into spirit. There's certain ways that you interpret the energy that they send so that you can understand what they're sending and kind of relay that to your sitter, the person who's receiving the reading. But what is so difficult about mediumship is that everyone has this unique energetic fingerprint, so to speak. Everyone receives the information in different ways and it means different things because it's coming through the lens of who you are and your experiences in your brain. So that's what takes so much time, is learning how that information comes into you, how to interpret that information the right way, and how you need to relay that out to your client. So that understanding of your unique energetic interpretation of it is what takes so long. So it was just practice after practice after practice. And after a long time of being able to be more confident in my accuracy and knowing that I was actually making a difference for the people that I'm reading for and really changing lives, it was a no-brainer for me to kind of move from this is a hobby into more of a professional space, because this is just such a needed skill set and career that people need to know that their loved ones are safe in heaven, that they have angels and guides watching over them, and let them realize that if there's a difficult passing, for example, like that grief is important, but it's also important to move on and continue to live the rest of your life and follow your journey and follow who you're supposed to be in this lifetime. So really, it's just the need was there in the marketplace, from a client perspective. And I was more than happy to be able to deliver that service, knowing that there's not a lot of high quality mediums. There's not a lot of high integrity mediums out there, and not a lot of mediums who can really get the full package of evidence and information and messages out to their clients. So to me, it was just such a natural leap to say, all right, let's start doing this full time so I can help as many people as I can.
Yeah, so something I want to again highlight that I love that you say, because I experience a similar understanding of coaches in the sphere that I work. And I'm not going to say fraudulent, because I really try not to cast judgment. But what I will say is that when you are really, really called to do something, you are immersed in it 24/7. You are continuously learning about it. You are practicing. You are experiencing. You are trying. And I very much like you live and breathe, strategies, tools, ways in which I can really take care of myself physically, spiritually, and mentally, so that I can teach from a place of intrinsic knowing rather than textbook or, certificate. And so I really love that you highlighted that, because you're right. There are a lot of people who may go through maybe a program, but if you're not really immersed in it with your daily rhythm, it doesn't become wisdom. It doesn't become knowledge. So talk to me about what it was like to kind of go from not being aware of spirit, so to speak. So you're obviously spiritual. You have a sense of a greater power, so to speak. Then to talk to this woman and be like, okay, I'm going to dive into this 8-week course. And the first day you're able to, interpret or read, and I really don't know, so you can correct me, the energy that's around you.
It was unreal. And it's where do I even start with that? There's so many different ways I can take it, but I guess at a high level, it was just unreal to know that this was kind of unlocked in me, and I say unlocked, but I feel like it was there all along, and I just didn't realize it. So it's so interesting, because hindsight's 2020. Being able to see now all the different moments of my life where spirit was there, and I just thought I was really clever. I just thought I was really smart. I remember distinctly the first time, like the biggest thing that stands out to me was this really silly incident where we were driving. My husband and I we were teenagers. We were going to vacation with his father to North Carolina. And I remember we're pulling up to this house on the beach in North Carolina. And remember and in my mind, I could see a vision of this big, the big plastic thing on top of the roof that has all the clothes in it, the roof rack thing. And I think it's called the turtle. And he's pulling under this thing, and I see it in my head, and I'm like, oh, and I realize he's going to hit it. And I don't say anything, because I'm like, I'm like 15, whatever. But then that's like, for example, the visual came from spirit reminding me and trying to say something before he smashed it, because he ended up smashing it. Right. So it's all stuff that's like these random these random visions or random images or words in my head that came out of nowhere. And I just thought it was just my brain, but knowing all along it's been spirit. It has been spirit like my entire life. And they continue to replay things for me, even to this day, of them showing me that they've been here helping me all along. So it's so interesting to hear, kind of see all of that stuff. But now, like present day, it's just, they have taken me on a journey since I've been working on this spiritual thing. And it's so interesting, because the spiritual awakening, right? Like everyone kind of talks about it. And really, it's not like this, ooh, I'm like in the clouds all day talking to spirit all day. It's more so spiritual development comes from within. And I can't serve my clients until I fix all the stuff that's in my like all my toxic things, like everything I do, all these bad habits, all this stuff I push deep down that I don't deal with. Like that is really what a spiritual awakening is forcing you to look within and become your best self. It has nothing to do with spirit. It's about how you can come here more pure and better serve for who you are and what you're here to do. So I think that has been the most impactful part of my journey for me is digging out all the weeds, all the dirt, and kind of focusing on all of that stuff that I didn't want to look at and solving all of that so that I can come to my clients and not be triggered by what I'm telling them, right? So that I can be present, so that I can be professional, so I can help people and put myself in the back seat and not always worry about me and how I'm going to feel and what's going to come out of it for me. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that's a beautiful explanation of spiritual awakening. And I 100% agree, because I went through a similar experience when my sister passed away. And I think so often, and even me, I think when I heard spiritual awakening, I thought, oh, wow, like you have Christ consciousness and everything's wooey and it feels good. No, you get slapped upside the head with a 2x4 with all of your egoic belief systems and, to your point, behaviors. And it is now you're being reminded every single day when you're out of integrity, right? So something else you said that I want to highlight that I understand, and maybe this can give a different perspective but help the community, is when I was really unpacking all this trapped energy within my body, I started burping and I'm like, what the hell is this? This is absolutely bananas. And I wasn't making an audible burp, but it was pockets of air. And so it took me 2 years of sitting in meditation. And I'm talking about, for me to realize that was just my expression, my individual expression of healing that energy. And some people may have similar expressions, but the point is we all experience our healing and or insights differently. And you're not going to be aware of them until, much like you said, you start to unpack the junk that's preventing you from knowing yourself fully. Because when you know yourself fully, it's not going to make sense to anybody else, but it's not meant to. That's why we're divinely here as individuals.
It's so interesting you talk about that, Carrie, because your body remembers. It's so like and the stuff that you shove down deep inside ends up in some way affecting you on a physical level, whether it is like upset stomach, whether it's stress, whether it's like pain in your shoulders, like a bum knee, something like that. You're absolutely right. Like, you think you can get away with it, but yeah, you need to unpack a lot of that stuff. And then a lot of those physical ailments that, you didn't know why you had it in the first place. It's not like a legit medical thing. It gets resolved. It's so interesting. It's so interesting.
Yeah. Well, and much like you said, so spirit was warning you about the turtle popping off, getting smashed, right? But the reality is spirit, or whatever, our intuition, however you want to look at it, gives us signs all the time. It's just so often we are operating from our thinking mind and not our heart, our intuition, that we blow right past it and then wonder why we ended up in that car accident. And so I totally understand how that your evolution has really been more about self-discovery. And as you discover yourself, you're able to tap even more deeply into the spiritual realm or whatever. So have you ever experienced, people or energies that have caused you a moment of pause? You said you work so that you don't project and that you're not triggered, but where you have been impacted in an emotional way, I wouldn't even say negative, that has caused you to be like, maybe this isn't for me? Or is it just something that you're drawn to?
It's interesting because I hate to toss around the term because it's overused, but I'm definitely an empath as well. So I'm still like kind of coming to terms with it, to be totally honest with you, and realizing that I take on the emotions of others and physical feelings too. So I would say I'm still personally struggling with it because I'm not just coming from middle of the road. I'm coming from like a STEM-based background where I'm 100% logical and analytical all the time. So I think it's taking me longer than most to kind of like come to terms with who I am and how I'm feeling and letting kind of this stuff come in the door and recognizing for what it is. So I don't always catch the emotions and feelings of others and know I need to back off, but on the really big ones I do.
Yeah.
So interesting because just this weekend I met a friend's husband for the first time, and he asked me, "Are you picking up anything on me?" Super interested in all this stuff, and I've never read it before, and I could feel how dense his energy was, and I'm just like, "What is that?" Like it literally felt like this wall of like molasses or mud, like right on the outside of him. And I've never been able to feel that before. So again, every day is a journey with this stuff. And I had to call and text them later. And I'm like, listen, now I figured out what it is. Cause I don't always get what it is right away, but I can feel it. So I check in with my guides on the ride home, and they're telling me that he's a wicked empath and he doesn't clear his energy. So essentially I was feeling all of the dense energy that he holds on to because he's not, again, energetically aware of everything that happens to him. So I was like, don't ask him this, but is he tired all the time? She's like, all the time. And I said, and I'm like, whatever. I said, something's going to happen at 2:00 today. Spirit's showing me 2:00. So whatever he's doing at 2:00 today, know that it's not him. It's the energy and emotion he's picking up from wherever he is. So check in with me at 2 and let me know what's going on. And he had like a total like shit show meltdown. Sorry to swear.
Yeah.
Like,
I
like
always swear. Are you kidding
okay,
me?
good.
This is me. I swear
I
all
know.
the time.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. You know me too. So I'm like a
Yeah,
sailor.
no. Are you kidding me? People
Yeah.
know. If you don't want to hear me cussing, I'm not your girl.
But he like had a total meltdown at 2:00, like wanted to go home, was a total grouch, and like just being able to call that out for people and try to help them out. So I guess in some instances I can kind of pick up on it to answer your question. In other instances, I can tell, oh, stay away. Like the energy is just bad juju. Like I went somewhere else this weekend. I went to like a local witch store this weekend, and I was like, that guy's crazy. I'm not going there again. Like, and I like to the point where I told my kids, I was like, when we walk in our house, you need to tell the universe to drop whatever energy we still have from that place, because it was bad. And I don't want any of that following us home.
Yeah. It's so interesting because I'm very intuitive. I never use the word empath simply because I feel people's energy. And because of the work I do, what's the energy I feel most often? It's anxiety, it's
Yeah.
fear, it's pervasive guilt, it's shame. And so a lot of times in my own work, I have to take 20-minute power naps.
Yeah.
And it took me, I want to say, a couple years, because much like you, I'm a logical thinker, and I, like you, was a leader in corporate America for 24 years. So what am I conditioned to do? I'm conditioned to show up at work at 8:00 on the dot, if not before, leave after 6. Don't take no breaks. If you take one, you better eat while working. And so for me to be able to shift that without feeling guilty was a journey within itself. So I love that you were able to say that, because I think a lot of times people absorb, well, not a lot. All of us absorb each other's energy. We're a big old mess of energy. But if you're not clear on who you are, you could be taking on people's energy all the time
Yes.
without knowing it. And then you're feeling like crap when you were perfectly happy 5 minutes ago for no other reason than you were just with somebody who is a total negative Nelly, who, is literally exuding shitty energy all day.
And even if you do have good, I'm going to call that psychic hygiene, you still need, like, even if you do have good boundaries, you still need to clear that energy, like one
Yes.
way or another, which, you can do in any way, right? You can set the intention, you can do some breathing, some meditation, you can use crystals, you can use sage. It doesn't matter, but you still need to know well enough to get rid of that energy, because most people have no idea. And I like my entire life, I've had these crazy mood swings, and I still do. And I forget, oh, wait, that's not me. So it's so interesting. It's definitely a journey.
Yeah, absolutely. So talk to me about, so actually, let me share. So for anybody watching, Nicole graciously offered to give me a reading. And I'll be honest, I was skeptical because even though I'm incredibly tapped into source energy, I've never been drawn to mediumship. It's like, yeah, I know you're there, but there's no, but you were really spot on with some of the things. Well, actually, most of them, like something like you mentioned about Jesus. I had Be Christ-like on my board. You knew I had a cat and a fish. That you nailed Shelley's personality to a T. I still talk to her. She's right there. She's still a bitch. But what can somebody who is interested but really doesn't know if they believe, what can they expect if they were to reach out to you and have you know a session with you?
Uh, Great question. So you can just sign up right on my website, but really it's just, we'll do a quick, you'll schedule the time and then you'll show up. You don't need to do any prep work or anything like that. I do ask my clients to kind of come with an open heart, open mind, even the skeptics, just because if you're a little closed off, then the reading's just not going to be as good. I find that my best readings are those that are totally open to whatever comes through. So your energy helps. So make sure you're in a good energetic spot. But other than that, you just kind of show up. I'll explain how I connect to spirit, what you can expect for the reading, and give them a chance to ask any questions before we get going. So it's really, really basic. There's no prep work really. And then every time I have a one-on-one reading, I'll ask them, do you want to play spiritual roulette and just see who comes through? Or do you want a specific person? And I'll try to pull that specific person through. Happened every time so far, knock on wood. It might not happen every single time where that specific soul will come through, but it's just, in that reading, you can expect that I'm going to give you evidence of who this person is first. I want you to know exactly who it is. So I'll pull out evidence. Like, personality is my sweet spot. And to be honest with you, personality is kind of the golden ticket in terms of mediumship evidence, because you can't Google that.
That is so true.
You can't Google personalities. I can go and Google, maybe not that you have a cat and two fish, but I can Google your family. I can Google who's passed, who's not passed, but I cannot Google personalities. So personality is kind of that golden nugget. But yeah, I'll give evidence of who it is. And then if we get enough information, or if I see that the client's giving me enough yeses, this is correct, then I'll just kind of gently move into the message that they have for you. And then if the energy is right, then I'll allow them to ask questions at the end, it's like 50-50. Sometimes I can get the answer, sometimes I can't. Some of them are really specific and you're not supposed to know it, which is always. But yeah, that's generally it. And then I always typically will send a recording out to my client from the session and just say, reach out if you have any questions. And that's basically it.
So do you work with people, so like as a one-off, or you mentioned a couple times that you reached out to somebody that you kind of worked with. Can people benefit from maybe going to you a few times and not just maybe connecting with their loved ones in a, hey, how you doing, sorry you died type way, but can you help me figure out life because shit's hitting the fan? Or is it more just, once a year, come see me and we tap into who's around?
I generally recommend once a year, unless something like really big is happening in terms of mediumship. So I'd say it's different for different types of services I offer, but for mediumship, I would say it's probably about once a year. And it's really just mediumship is to essentially prove that there's life after death and that your loved ones are still around you, and to prove what's going on lately. Some people, only need that once, which is totally fine. And I'm more than happy to be like one client meeting. That's fine. Other people just want to connect once in a while to just remind themselves that the person's around and to really feel the essence of their past loved ones. So they'll typically set those up a couple of times. So I would say that's kind of it. If you're looking for more guidance on specific problems, I connect to spirit guides and angels to do that. You can generally do that as much as you want. And then Akashic Records, which we're going really down the rabbit hole here, but Akashic Records is essentially the book of your soul. And you can connect to those as often as you want. But the key, I think, in all of this stuff is all of these different readings will give you recommendations that you need to go forward and do and change and go act upon. And if you don't do the homework between the sessions, the next session is going to be exactly the same, because they're not going to give you different advice if you haven't taken advice from the first meeting.
Sounds like the work I do,
Yes.
interestingly enough. I wonder why I keep hitting the bottle. Well, you actually have to take action. It's really true. So, is there anything we didn't touch upon or anything you want the community to know about mediumship or the Akashic records, or really just any of the services that you offer that we didn't touch upon?
So I would say I'm getting the nudge from spirit to talk about the Akashic records for a minute. So let me kind of break down what that is, because a lot of folks don't know what that is. It's a lot of people don't offer that service. There's very few people who can actually read Akashic records. I'm one of the lucky ones, which I genuinely appreciate. But essentially, you connect to a whole other like level of what's it called, of reality, right? So you're connecting to the fifth dimension, and you're connecting to the Akasha, which essentially is the book of your soul. So this idea that there's a book for every single soul out there is not new. It's in every religious text that's out there. And essentially it will tell you your soul's past, present, and future. So if you have recurring issues that just keep popping up, even though you're trying to tackle them, and you don't know why this keeps coming up, like that's a great opportunity to go ask in the Akashic records, why is this a recurring theme in my life? How can I get over it? What's the work I need to do to get over it? Me personally, I've had some issues in my family, and I've gone into the Akashic records to understand what is my soul contract? What is the relationship with my family member? What are we here to learn? And just knowing that information, and by the way, I've been to therapy for this, knowing what they said in the Akashic records solved it. Like it
Yeah.
fixed my problem, because I'm like, oh, now I can see the big picture. I can understand what the purpose of that relationship is, what I'm supposed to learn from it, and what I'm supposed to do going forward from it. And knowing that it's not like me and something I did wrong and some sort of character flaw I have, I was able to kind of take that information and resolve it. So it really just gives you these really peeks and insights into what's going on. How can you help overcome some of these recurring issues? Why is this my painful journey here? What was a past life that contributed into this current life? So it really, to me, helps you uncover the big picture of your soul and really gives you that map so that you can make better choices and decisions for what you're here to do in this lifetime so that you can be successful. So I recommend it to everybody. Usually that's like a multiple session deal, because once you learn what you need to kind of understand the information, then you need to figure out how to integrate it. And then you're on to the next one, because obviously just like the journeys that we're all on, whether it's the dark night of soul, whether it's, recovery for addiction, you take one step and you realize there's three more.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
works. So it's like my version of life's cheat sheet on how you can do better at a much faster rate than learning the lessons kind of day by day.
Yeah. It's interesting. I just finished the biography of a yogi by Paramahansa Yogananda, and he talks about it taking 1,000,000 years to get back to. So for me, I believe that the energy that we all stem from is love. But then, all of, much like you said, all of the stuff our souls have experienced have, covered us from it going back to that place, but 1,000,000 years. And so he shares, what is it? Kriya yoga has a ability to help expedite it, but much to what you said, there are all different tools. And he even mentions it in his book, right? There's just so many different tools. And really, what's important is that you find the one that really calls to you, that you are intrigued by, and you go after it, because ultimately, you can't go wrong in learning yourself more. It's going to allow you to feel more empowered and make more informed choices. And what you said, I heal a lot when I can let go of guilt and shame. It's it's the two most toxic energies there are. Vibrating at 25 and 50 megahertz out of 1,000. And so when you can have the story behind why you're continuing to experience something and break free of that shame and guilt, that's pretty powerful. So if anybody was interested, I trust Nicole implicitly. I've known her since I was 20, 21. And while, there's been a huge gap in time where we haven't connected, much like you, I trust my energy intrinsically. So if I'm gonna ever send anybody to somebody, I vouch for Nicole myself because I went through that experience personally, and I know her as a human being. So thank you so much for your time. I deeply appreciate it. I'm going to end record and then we can follow up real quick, but I will put your links in the show notes for anybody so that they can reach out to you. And I hope you guys do.
Thank you so much, Carrie. It's been a pleasure. Love chatting with you.